Hi, Jason.
Good morning. Thanks for the invite.
Good morning. Yes, lovely to see you here. Definitely, I'm looking forward to this episode. It's definitely something that would be useful to everyone else. So I think as a bit of introduction, we're just bringing in experts that are actually doing what they are preaching. And I've watched you over time, and I know you're very popular in the community. You've done quite a lot of things yourself. And more importantly, I love your journey, how you started and where you are currently. So that's what we'll be diving in this episode with Jason Patterson. You have a nickname, so I would allow you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about your nickname as well. Why is that been sticking with you for some time? So welcome, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Jason Patterson, aka the Short Lease King. So mainly, obviously, because I like to buy flats with short leases. So in relation to short leases, in England, you have freehold property and you have leasehold property. So if you buy a leasehold property, that means you're given a flat of some kind and it has a lease on that. So that flat may have had a long lease initially of maybe 99 years or 125 years. And then every year that lease gets lower and lower and lower. And then when it gets to 80 years, is what they call the marriage value. And any flat that falls below 80 years is classed as a short lease. So the lower the lease, the more it's going to cost to extend, but the more money you can make once you extend it, because you're adding value. So think of it as the paper version of the BRR. So if you buy a flat, for example, that maybe 68 years left on the lease, you can get a mortgage on it, you can get bridging finance in it, or you can buy it cash or crowdfunding. Choice is yours. But once you extend the lease back above the 80 years, then you're adding value to the flat, and then the equity, you can either obviously flip it and sell it on, or you can take out equity and then buy more property with that, or do what you choose with the money. So basically, you buy short leases, you extend the lease, and that creates value, and then that value you can either flip it on or reuse that to buy more property. That's basically what I do. So I started in 2001. That was when I bought my first ever flat in Enfield, North London, for 70,000. And the first ever lease extension that I did was a voluntary lease extension, which was in 2002. So with lease extensions, you can either do it the formal way or the informal way. So the formal way is when you serve a Section 42 notice and you can extend your lease by 90 years with peppercorn ground rent. Now, peppercorn ground rent means zero ground rent. And the freeholder has to oblige to extend your lease. Okay, they cannot refuse you to extend your lease. Or if you go the voluntary route, which is the informal route, then you can extend your lease to 99 years, to 125 years, to 990, to 999, and the ground rent can vary as well. Yeah, so two routes: the Section 42 route, the formal route, and the informal route, which is the voluntary route. So you can choose either one to extend your lease, and then after that, you add value. You can either rent out the property afterwards, or you can flip it on and then sell it. So the choice is yours.
Thank you for giving that. I know you've dropped a lot of stuff. We're going to deep dive into some of those things so that a lot of people will get much more basic understanding from this. But before we go into that, I know you've mentioned you bought your first flat, 75K and so on, and it's since 2001. But I think what is interesting that we might miss out is because sometimes there is that idea that you need a lot of money to start to, you need to have a lot of experience. I want you to cast back to 2001 when you started. Tell us what you were doing then, where you were working, if you don't mind, maybe the kind of salary, and how you were able to actually purchase a property. I know it wasn't just one you bought while you were working in a regular, possibly blue collar job. So I would like you to share that experience just to give us a bit of depth into where the journey really started from.
Yeah, so basically I was in Sainsbury's. I was there for 11 years in total. I was on the bread aisle, just stacking bread. So putting out King's Mill, Hovis, Mr. Kipling pies. So I was in the same position for 11 years, but I started on £3.28 an hour. And then after a few years, I said, can't do this anymore. It's too much. So there has to be another way of making money, whether it's buying a property or starting a business or stocks and shares, because crypto wasn't around then. So I tried to think of a business idea. It wasn't working. And I wasn't too good with stocks and shares. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and get into property, which is a lower barrier to entry. So did a lot of overtime, Sunday pull-outs, which is like 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Done Sunday shift, took my normal shift. Done trolleys on checkout because I wasn't chill trained. Done night shift as well. Colin let me have some night shift work. That's like 10 p.m. until 7 a.m. in the morning. So I've done like 60, 70-hour weeks just trying to get the money together. And then I managed to get enough cash to buy my first flat. That was in 2001. And then that same flat I still got to this day. I bought it for 70,000. and that one had a lease of about 82, 83 years. I mean, the following year, I increased the lease by obviously contacted the freeholder. But yeah, so initially worked a lot, worked hard, saved, took a while. I mean, I got the deposit together to buy my first ever flat, because in order for you to stay in the same sort of position, or even manager, or the pay wasn't that great. And with me, I like nice things. So I said there has to be another way of making some money without obviously doing it illegally. So I said property was a way forward, and then I moved forward from there. So I managed to buy 5 flats while I was in Sainsbury's in that period of time of 11 years. And then after that, you refinance with the flat, take your money out, rental income, plus my Sainsbury's income, plus overtime income. And then I managed to scale the portfolio from there bit by bit by bit. So that's how it started initially.
Thank you for that. 2001 was completely a different game to what we have now. That's 25 years of experience. Casting back then, and you mentioned were you buying as a buy-to-let? Were you buying residential? How much deposit did you need to put out then? And were there creative things you were doing then, or you were just doing the standard approach, and that just allowed you to scale up? And most people would not have bought a property, a flat that is 83 years old. Were you consigned at any point? Did anybody tell you never to do this? Just imagine that you are unable to renew. What do you know then that give you the confidence to actually go for things like that?
Yeah, so basically, because of I wanted to get into property, but to buy houses, too expensive for me, way out of my league. If I was just to start with houses, which is freehold property, I'd never have started. So I said, you know what? It's a lower barrier to entry. I'm going to start with flats, lower deposit. At the time, for buy-to-lets, it was a minimum of 15% deposit initially. Yeah, but what some people did as well, they used to buy the flat for a bit, for lower deposit, 5-10% deposit, live in it for a little bit, and then move on to a bigger flat afterwards and rent out the old flat. So you could put down a smaller deposit that way as well. But if you're doing buy-to-let back then, it was 15% deposit back then, just vanilla buy-to-let. And I didn't know anything about the BRR or short leases or reconfiguring or refurbing it. I didn't know anything about that. I just bought it, rented it out, and then moved on to the next one. But it's only after maybe 7-8 years that's when I started to do a short lease strategy. But before that, it's just vanilla buy-to-let. So I bought it, rented it out, and then after a while, I met a guy called AJ. When I basically bought my first one, and then on my second one, I went to a different mortgage broker, and then they said to me, I said to them, right, I want to buy 3 properties. So he looks at my spreadsheet. I don't know the math correctly, and I managed to buy 3 flats in one go. That was in 2003. Now, he gave me an idea about the BRR, where you buy the flat, you add the value by refurbing it and adding another bedroom. Because outside his shop, his estate agent, he had a nice Mercedes, nice black Mercedes. So I said, I was taken back. I said, how did you get this Mercedes? He said, Jason, you know what I did? I bought this flat in Edmonton, 1-bedroom flat. I turned it into a 2-bedroom flat. I've done a refurb on it. I'm going to put the money out. I'm going to use that money to buy my Mercedes. So I was like, before then, I didn't know. I thought he'd just buy the flat and rent it out. But what he done, he added value by refurbing it and by adding another bedroom, reconfiguration. So from then, next few flats that I bought, I was buying them and adding another bedroom and refurbing it as well. Yeah, I mean, as time progressed, I started to buy flats with short leases. Yeah, so I was doing what I call a triple threat. So I buy the flat with a short lease, I refurb it, and I reconfigure it by adding another bedroom. So 3 ways of adding value. So from then, so basically I started with vanilla buy-to-let, then refurbs, then reconfigurations. Then now I do a lot of short leases, buying freeholds and block management. So like a logical progression in relation to leasehold properties. But like you said, the market was a lot different back then. There was less regulation, no Renters' Rights Act, no EPCs. You could charge the interest payments on your mortgage if it's under your personal name. You could put that down as an expense. So many different factors were conducive towards landlords back then. But now, a lot of government policy and restrictions in relation to making money moving forward. So you have to be a lot more smarter and wiser.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a very important strategy you mentioned there. I wanted you to expand on it. So let's take a novice that doesn't know anything about property, and they've heard, Jason is a short lease king, and you want to help them to put a structure in terms of this is how you want to use this triple solution. Yeah. Could you expand on that? Give us a real life example, what you needed to do, what's the cost of getting the reconfiguration, and maybe put it out in a step-by-step way that people would easily understand. And then maybe later I would ask some other questions. I believe you do some training in this and stuff, but just lay it out to first-time person that's looking to take on this strategy, what would that be step by step?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, there's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, you got to find the flat where it's big enough to happen. Now, most lenders will only lend to you. There's a few that will lend under, but the minimum flat size is 30 square meters. So now, if, for example, you find a bigger flat, which is like 50 something or 49 square meters or 56 square meters, just for argument's sake, and that's a 1-bedroom flat, or some of the ex-local authority flats are quite big and they have big front rooms, for example, then what you can do is move the kitchen into the front room and you turn the old kitchen into a bedroom. Yeah, but that minimum size of a kitchen has to be 6.51. So that's one option. And then you can turn that kitchen into a bedroom and turn it from 1 bed into a 2-bed. Another option is if you've got a big council place, ex-local authority, and the bedroom and the front room is massive, like really big, you can put a stud partition wall up in that room there. And then you can have a separate bedroom. So reception room and another bedroom that way as well. So turn it from 1 bed to a 2-bed, just as an example. Yeah, so look for space where the minimum bedroom size can be 6.51 in order to reconfigure it. And obviously do a refurb as well. Now with the flats, the sweet spot for me is between 50 years and about 75 years-ish for the leases. Yeah, so if you find a flat with a short lease between 50 years and 75-ish, that's where I like to find or make the most money out of those ones. You can buy flats where the lease is below that, but it can cost you a lot more to extend the lease once you do it. Yeah. So if you can find a flat where, like I said, if you can extend the lease, reconfigure it, and do a refurb, it's 3 ways of adding value to that flat. And then you can either keep it or sell it on afterwards. Now, if you're going to reconfigure a flat, you must ask the freeholder for a consent to alter. Yeah. So you can't just buy the flat and then reconfigure it. You need to ask permission. Some freeholders charge for this, and some do not charge. Now, I get a lot of questions asked. What if a freeholder says no? Now, what you have to do is when you reconfigure in the kitchen or the flat itself, try and make sure that it doesn't affect the rest of the building, the fabric of the building. So no load-bearing walls being removed. The waste pipe and soil pipes should hopefully not be affected in relation to the other flats. So if you can keep those things fine just for your flat, get separated, and it doesn't affect the other flats, then 100% of the time, the freeholder should say yes. But if you're going to mess about with a soil pipe for the flats downstairs or upstairs, or ask to move a load-bearing wall, then the freeholder will probably say no to you because you're affecting the rest of the building. And with the kitchen, like I said, there's no minimum size for the kitchen, but a lot of the time nowadays, they have open plan kitchen diners in a lot of the flats that have been built now. You know? So if it's got gas in the old kitchen, make sure you cap it off with a gas safe engineer. Obviously, you just plaster it over, and it has to be a minimum size of 6.51 square meters. If you're going to turn it into a child's bedroom, I think it's 4.59 or something like that for a child's bedroom. But I always try and turn an old kitchen into an adult's bedroom just in case. And another thing, if you're going to rent out that flat, then and it's going to be like an Airbnb or Booking.com, then you need to get permission from the freeholder in order to rent it out as an Airbnb. Because sometimes in the deed of covenant, you might need to amend it as long as they agree to it, obviously. Yeah. So no short-term lets unless the freeholder allows it. But check the terms of the lease just to be safe as well. That's if you're going to rent it out afterwards. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's very detailed. So don't expect anybody to just jump at this and take it on. You mentioned some important things, professionals and all of that. And how much of the professionals you get involved in this from early start? So imagine someone is starting out. I know maybe it might be easier for you to see the floor plan and understand what you're doing. But for someone that is starting out, what would you recommend they start with in terms of, yes, you are the king of this, but for someone else, what would they need to start with for them to actually understand, okay, yes, I'm talking to the right professionals. You've talked about the covenant just in case they want to, I mean, not just for short-let or anything, but it might be an important document that they want to see and review and stuff. So what professionals have you put in place in your team, and what would anybody looking at this need to start with?
Yeah. So basically, you need a lease extension surveyor, which is separate from a normal valuer. They'll either do a desktop valuation for you or a physical valuation for you in terms of a lease extension. Yeah? But whatever the freeholder comes back to you with in terms of a lease extension figure, get this verified by a lease extension surveyor. Sometimes the freeholder tries to inflate the price of the lease extension. You have to get it verified just to be safe. And you also need a lease extension solicitor. Now, he or she will obviously do all the paperwork for you. You've got deed of variation, you've got deed of substitute security, you've got the lease extension part of it. So there's a few documents that they can deal with that for you. And if there's any issues between yourself and the freeholder, then either my one's she can sort it out for you in relation to any friction, like serving a section 42 notice to the freeholder to extend your lease. Or if you're going to buy the freehold, which I've done before as well. So I bought it as a short lease flat, and then I've ended up buying the freehold again. your lease extension solicitor can look after that for you as well. So those two are important. EPC woman, which I've got, but sometimes you might buy a flat which is below an E, so below a C for EPC. Now in 2030, I think it is now. I think they might change the date from 2028 to 2030. I think it is. All flats, all properties, not even flats and houses, need to be a minimum of a C before you can rent it out. So if you're going to buy a flat with a short lease, either auction or an open market, and it's below a C, when you're doing your refurb and reconfiguration, that would be a good time for you to boost it, bring it up to a C in time for the regulations. Yeah, so I've got Irina. She does the EPCs for me. Lease extension surveyor, extension solicitor, and also your mortgage broker is very important as well, because they will find out your bridging finance fee or your mortgage offer in relation to buying a short lease flat as well. Look at what deals are available, and your conveyancing solicitor is needed as well. Yeah, they're the person that's going to be obviously going through the purchase for you. If you're buying from auction, you might have 28 days to complete. But that person is important for you to put down your 10% deposit at auction, plus any fees, everything else, and then complete within that 28 days. Otherwise, it's trouble. And then once you do purchase it, you need your build team there. Once you contact the freeholder, floor plan needs to be done. That's straightforward. Get that sent over to the freeholder. Freeholder can have a look at it. Once they're happy with all of the works and all the comments that you mentioned on the email, hopefully come back with a yes, and we can move forward. And then your build team can come in and reconfigure the flat for you and do all of your refurb work as well. So that's part of the power team that you really need initially.
Okay, we're going to talk about, again, for someone starting, how possibly is the best way for them to leverage other people's skills, leverage other people's network and team. So we're going to talk about that. You mentioned auction. We're going to go into auction because that's something we are passionate about. That's something we help a lot of people about. But before we go in there, short lease is fantastic strategy. What's been the one mistake that you can forget in your journey?
Initially, I used to take the freeholder's quote as what it should be. But once I got speaking to a lease extension surveyor, they come back to me and said, no, this is inflated. They've added on 5% or 10% of what it should be, because they want a cream. Yeah. So before I never used to negotiate the price down. But whatever the freeholder comes back with, you can negotiate the price down. So that mistake I made in the beginning, I just accepted it and then moved forward. What else? Sometimes your freeholder or your conveyancer will also double check the service charges as well. But sometimes in the description, it might come up with, I don't know, 2,000 a year, 1,800 a year for the service charge.
Yeah.
And there's no major works as part of the description. But when your solicitor comes in and says, yeah, they're expecting some major works to happen, it's going to cost $7,000, $8,000, and each leaseholder has to pay their share of that amount. So double check those kind of things. Yeah. So service charge amounts via your legal team. You can also negotiate the price down in terms of lease extension, which my surveyor can do on my behalf and get the price down for you. So those are the main areas really that were improved over the time.
Okay. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to go into a battle for a freeholder to agree with you? Maybe you thought this is going to be an easy stuff. It got extended, it got into disputes and stuff. Have there been any issues like that in your journey?
Yeah, the longest one took about 9 months. So the freeholder gave me a quote. It was quite high. So I verified it with my surveyor. He said this is high. So he had to go around and do a physical valuation, come back with that surveyor's report, and then send it off back to the freeholder. And then they weren't budging on the price, and that's what it should be. So over a 9-month period, my surveyor and the freeholder were battling it out. This was the voluntary route, by the way, battling it out. And then they managed to agree a figure closer to what it should be. Yeah, that took a while. Another route, if you serve a Section 42 notice and the freeholder again does not agree with your figure, over that period of time, you have 6 months to agree a premium. If you can't agree a premium within those 6 months, then that case will go to the tribunal, and then the tribunal will decide what you pay for lease extension based on the surveyor's reports. Yeah, so there's 2 different routes, but the one that I had was the informal route. So it took about 9 months for the price to come down, and we agreed a premium of lease extension. So if you're on a bridge, or if you're on a mortgage, not so bad. But if you're on a bridge, or you've got investors that are helping you, then you have to make them aware of this, because it may delay the completion of your actual leasing the funds out of it.
Thank you. You mentioned a good point. Let's get into bridging. So in your experience, have you had any bridging finance for short-term projects? Any of your network, have they had bridging finance? And what's the most scary thing that maybe they not a lot of people don't understand about bridging finance, especially for short-term finance and stuff. So, and how have you been able to overcome that? I know you talked about private investors as well, so we'll talk about that later. But just specific to bridging, how has that journey been for you, and how have you been leveraging that?
Yeah, so with if you're going to use bridging to purchase a short lease flat, i.e., by an auction, so you might see a flat in Auction House London, just for argument's sake, it might have 53 years left on the lease, and it can't get a mortgage on it. It's dilapidated and it's uninhabitable. So what you can do is go to your broker, and your broker can give you a list of products or lenders which are available to lend on that particular flat. So let's just go for different types of bridges. So bridge number one, the lender may say to you, right, we'll lend you the money, but you need to have completed release tension before the end of the bridge. Route number two is where the lender will say to you, right, we'll give you the bridge, but you've got to serve a Section 40 notice in between exchange and completion.
Yeah.
And the other type of bridge that you can get is like what I call a hybrid product, where the lender will lend on the end value of the flat. So just for argument's sake, say it's worth 400,000 in a good condition, good lease, but you're buying it for maybe 250 or 280. The lender will lend on the end value of 400. Then that will cover the flat purchase, it will cover the lease extension, and it will cover a light refurb. So you only have to pay for the solicitor's fees, the surveyor's fees, the stamp duty, and any other little fees. But as a whole, you either put in little or no money yourself. Yeah, I mean, lender will lend on end value. Those rates are a bit higher than other rates. Now, with that, obviously, try and go for a 12-month bridge just to be safe. If there's any issues, you can take up to 9 months-ish or so to extend the lease. So it should be fine. If it runs smoothly and the freeholder does not try and inflate the price for you, then after the third month, you should be fine. It should be completed on lease extension. But once you're happy with the figure, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for the paperwork to go through to extend your lease. Then off the land registry to be registered. Yeah. So after 3 months, if things run smoothly, you can get your refurb done. You can extend your lease in that time as well. Off the land registry to be registered, and then you might need to expedite. You have to get registered if you're going to come off that bridge and go into a normal buy-to-let mortgage, or if you're going to flip it, then that's something else. Yeah, because there's some delays at land registry at the moment. And make sure that you complete everything that you need to do: the refurb, reconfiguration, the refurb, all in that time of 12 months if you can. Because if you go over the 12 months, then there's penalties that you might need to pay, with financial penalties, if you go over your time. But I'm sure if you speak to the lender and keep them informed about what you're doing, i.e., the freeholder is taking a bit longer than normal, etc., then sometimes they will allow you to stay on the same rate for another month or two. Yeah. But if you don't keep them informed about what you're doing, or if any delays, then they're liable to give you a penalty, a financial penalty. So make sure you do it within that period of time. And yeah, that's auction properties. And then sometimes I buy post-auction. The post-auction is when you look at what's left over, lots that did not sell. Yeah. And then generally there's 28 days to complete, but I try and ask for 56 days to complete, because there's no time limits on it. I mean, in that time, if this property is habitable, I can get a mortgage on it in that time, within about 4 to 6 weeks, get a mortgage on it, and retain a unit. Yeah. I mean, obviously extend the lease, refurb it, and after 6 months I can refinance with the same lender, by product transfer or equity release, and then get the fund back into my pocket and then go again. So it all depends. So I always look at post-auction properties a lot of the time, because you can get a lot of people just leave the short lease ones there. No, it's a short lease, don't want to get involved, this and that, but those ones are bringing the most money.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Just in terms of the bridging and the finance, one of the things I always tell clients is they need to be very careful, because when these things go wrong, it could be so bad. And your experience also matters in terms of how a lender will treat you. That's very key. So what you're getting will be very different from what a new person will get. So just for people to be mindful, there are a lot of creative ways to set things up, but just at the same time, they need to understand different lenders would apply things differently. There are lenders, like you mentioned, that would do bridging finance for below market value. A lot of them would expect you to say maybe 90% of the purchase price, meaning that you still need to put in 10% deposit, some 95%. So it varies for different reasons, for different stuff. So just for people to be careful, because from my experience, what I see is a lot of people out there are pushing different courses, not very ethical, but people get in and then they get stuck. So from your network, you've had, tell us a bit about your network in terms of how you help other people to maybe copy what you do, maybe do it better, or you act as a guide to them. Tell us a bit about that. And also, one case that you have experienced either directly or through someone else that you feel like things have gone completely wrong and what they could have done differently. Maybe you visited a property and you feel like, wow, how could maybe somebody have taken out a structural beam from a flat and they didn't realize they shouldn't have and stuff. So maybe tell us a bit about that and how you support investors within the short lease strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically with my services, I offer 3 main services. So the first one is a 1 hour Zoom, like a paid 1 hour Zoom. So if you're refurbing a house or a flat, or doing a BRR, or doing assisted sales or a lease option, I can help with that, or a short lease, obviously, and your experience will have some knowledge. Just a 1 hour Zoom would be enough. We can go through the deal analysis, check all the figures, check all the metrics, make sure the deal stacks, equity release, make sure you have enough equity release in relation to your stress test and rental cover calculation, make sure that's all covered. For some people do the work or the refurb and expect, yeah, I'm going to take out 75% of the money straight away. But if it doesn't pass rental cover calculation or stress test, they can't do that. Or they can take out maybe 65% or 60% of the money. So we go through all of that in a 1 hour Zoom. Or I also offer the short lease course, which is like over 5 sessions. And then go through everything in relation to short leases. The government policies, leasehold and common hold reform act, the finance elements, using a mortgage, crowdfunding, bridging, reconfiguration, more in depth, all of the fees involved, what is actually how to extend your lease, what's in the formula for the lease extension formula, how to finance it, where to find them, how to source them. So that's the 5 hour, that's the 5 sessions part of the course. You know? And then the third option is the mentorship for a year. So if you have, for example, cash ready to go and you want to increase your portfolio or build your portfolio up even more, then for that whole year, depending on how much you have in your kitty, you might be able to buy maybe 2-3 properties in that period of a whole year. I mean, I hold your hand all the way through that process. So you can use my solicitors, my lease solicitors, my surveyors, my EPC woman, etc., etc. You can use my whole team in order for you to build your portfolio. So that's available for anyone that needs some assistance on that. And then in relation to the horror stories now, some individuals, they've seen my videos online and they get confident and think, yeah, I don't need any training or anything like that. So they just, what they've done, they just asked me for the surveyor's number or the solicitor's number or the broker's number. So I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll just give it to you. And then one of them, I found out that she bought a flat at auction. Said, oh, Jason, thank you for inspiring me from the videos. I bought a flat auction, but she bought it. Congratulations, but she didn't read the legal pack properly. She read it herself, I believe. Now she saw 59 years in the document. That was the start of the original lease. Yeah. So when she bought the flat, I think it was like 13 years left on the lease. 13 years. So once you read it afterwards, like double check the small print. 13 years left. And it's going to cost her 110,000 to extend the lease. And the lender that she chose didn't have the hybrid option available, so she couldn't extend the lease on that flat. She didn't have the money, so she refinanced her house as well. She got in trouble with her husband. I don't know what happened afterwards though. Yeah, but she basically put down a 10% deposit, tried to wiggle out of it, the auction, because you're tied in by contract once you put down the deposit and you win. Yeah, she tried to wiggle out of it and she lost her deposit. I think she lost about 50 grand as a deposit plus fees because she didn't read the legal pack properly or get some assistance in relation to moving forward. So always get a legal person for you, or if you're more experienced, you've done 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 deals, whatever it may be, and you're experienced about looking at the legal pack, then great. But if you're a newbie, get a professional to look at the legal pack for you, summarize it, so you're aware of all of the risks involved, yeah, in terms of the deed of variation, covenant, etc., fees, yeah, before you move forward. Yeah, that's number one. Number two, another case was when the person, again, I didn't know him from before, but he contacted me and said, yeah, I bought this flat, I reconfigured it from 1 bed to a 2 bed, and all the refurb work. It wasn't a short lease, just a refurb, like a flick project. Yeah, I've done all the work. I didn't have a bedroom. Now I want to sell it. But I didn't know, but you had to get permission to reconfigure it. So I said, just like, you should have known or contact the freeholder at least. I said, no, I only contact them now. Contacted them and then showed them the plans and they said, sorry, we're not accepting this. You have 6 weeks to put it back to its original state, or otherwise we're going to take court action against you. He's like, whoa. Yeah, so he was shocked. So then, luckily, he managed to, he got a building surveyor involved, he got building control, litigation involved, and then luckily, he was able to do retrospective consent to alter. They paid them a fee, and then because it was all right, then the freeholder dropped the case. Yeah? And then he's managed to flip on afterwards. So always make sure you get consent to alter first before we can figure the flat from 1 bed to 2 bed, 2 bed to 3 bed. But sometimes if that happens, you might have to go to court I mean, if you lose a case, they'll put it back to its original state. I mean, you've lost a lot of money.
Definitely. So as you highlighted, there's a lot of pitfalls to any strategy, and it's just not taking the headline and running with the headline. You need to, especially with specialist property and stuff, you need to understand what is actually happening under the hood, not just to feel like what you do in or what Jason does in his strategy would work for every property, would work for every strategy and stuff. So I know you covered this in your course and stuff. So give us a number that you will say, okay, maybe 100K, maybe 50K, whatever that is. It doesn't necessarily need to be London, because maybe some people, okay, it shouldn't be in London. I want something outside London that people could say, okay, I want to start on this journey. This is what I would need to start this journey. I can go to a location, find a property, a flat, a leasehold for this amount, and then do all the work that is required and stuff. So factor in what would be the cost to just on the high level, so that it gives someone a kind of framework to know, yes, if you can do this with this amount, if you have more, you can do London, you can do stuff. So if you could speak into that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So basically, just give a simple scenario. Say the flat you see for 100,000, whether it's Midlands or Doncaster or someone like that, for example, or even Kent. Not sure about Kent, but might be too expensive for that. But just say it costs 100,000 with a short lease in bad condition, and the end value would be about 180 in good condition. So you need to think about the deposit to buy it. If you're buying, just say you put that 25% deposit, which is 25,000. So that's the deposit. With stamp duty involved as well, with maybe another 5% plus. And then you got the conveyancing solicitor, and then you got the surveyor. You might get a free service by the deal or not. Broker fee as well. You might need to say about 30 grand, 31 grand, 32 grand to purchase it. Then you're going to need maybe another 10 grandish, 15 grandish to extend the lease. Yeah. And you got to pay for the freeholder's legals. You got to pay for your legals, and you got to pay for the lease extension surveyor as well. Yeah. So 4 things: the premium, legals, and surveyor. Just say they came in at 20 grand just to be safe. So 20 grand for that. And then just say 30 grand for the first part. That's 50 grand altogether. And then you might want to pay for the a light refurb. Might be 10 grand for a light refurb. Yeah. So that's about 60K. I mean, end value might be 180, 190, 200. That's a bad example. Could need more of a margin, but just to give you an idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So to purchase it, about 30K-ish, about 20K-ish for the lease extension and stuff, 10K-ish for a light refurb, and then you can move forward that way. It's about 60K-ish in total. Or if you want to buy a flat which is a bit cheaper, I said Liverpool, Manchester outskirts, and you might see it for 80,000, and then apply the same principle, but with lower amounts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. At least that would help someone to picture how this could work in their scenario, which is the whole idea about this. We want to be able to give people insight to know property journey could be started by anyone. You started 2001, and now it's a completely different ballgame. You've consulted, you've had a lot of meetings, you've done training and stuff. What's one thing or a few things that you wish people ask you, or you wish that people know in this journey that people kind of shy away from? What's that few things that you possibly want to highlight?
Well, number one, you can still make money out of leasehold properties, because when I was younger, a lot of people were saying, oh, don't buy leasehold, never buy leasehold, always buy freehold. But in terms of finances, not everyone can afford to buy freehold. Yeah, so you can always make money out of leasehold. If you don't want to hold it and retain the unit, that's fine. You can add the value and then flip it on. That way, it's not part of your portfolio anymore, and you can use that money to buy more freehold properties if you want to going forward, or going to new builds or commercial to resi or commercial. You can use it as a launch pad. Me, I've done it all my life, so I don't mind. You can still make a good life out of it, still buy a decent residential house, still buy a dream car, still have 4 holidays a year, like still not have to work, retire early. So you can still make money out of leasehold, like I've done. Also, be patient as well. If you're first starting out, be patient. Initially, you might buy your first one, and then you're thinking, oh, I want to get another one quickly. Depending on what lender you go with, not all lenders, but majority of lenders, you have to wait 6 months before you can buy or refinance another one. But not all lenders apply that principle. Sometimes you can do it before 6 months. Or if you're buying cash, you can do it all within 3-4 months. Then go into a buy-to-let mortgage, refinance, take that money out, and then go again. So sometimes you can do maybe 3 in a year, for example. Yeah. So be patient when you're first starting out. I know initially it's like, oh, I want to get more faster. That's a snowball effect. You get 1 or 2 the first year, and then that might creep up in value if it's a good market. Plus your rental income, plus you added the value, you refinance that, plus you might be working as well. plump it all together. But the following year, it might be able to get 2 or 3. And then the following year, the 2 year fix might be up, take out some equity, that's rental income, and you might be able to get 3 or 4. And so all of a sudden, it's a snowball effect. And then you get more and more and more and more at a faster rate. And then nowadays, if you're scaling, it's probably best to buy in a limited company rather than under your personal name.
Yeah.
I mean, just pay 19% corporation tax initially, which can rise to 25% corporation tax, and you can scale faster in that sense. Back then as well, I didn't use, even now, I don't use any investor funds to buy my properties. But if you're starting out and you have little or no money, you can always use investor funds, get them involved, give them a return on their money, 8 to 10%, maybe 12%, depending on what you're doing. Add your value, refinance, give them back the money, and then the next one you can just do yourself, or so on. Or you flip it, give them back their money, and you keep the rest. So that's another way of doing it. Or you can do rent to start with, or get a product on a bridge, like I said before, you put in little or no money, 5% loan to value, or 8% loan to value. So the main different ways that you can use or do to start your property journey with little or no money, or do a JV with someone, and then just get started that way. So yeah,
okay. I think the first one you mentioned is, I mean, a lot of people feel lease option, it's a no-go. One thing I tell people is, even if it's not creative stuff, first-time buyers, I say, start from where you are. That's just the main thing. You want to buy a house, but you can't afford a house. You might wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But what you can afford 3 years ago will still be more expensive, maybe a few years down the line. So start from where you are. Obviously, this is others I say, a lot of properties in the UK are leasehold. It can't all be that bad. Yeah, there are places that you need to be careful about. Service charges, ground rent, all of those things. But again, start from where you are. Okay, you are establishing this, and some people might be listening to feel like, okay, I don't want to get too involved in this. You said you don't use investor for something. What could someone bring to you today to say, okay, we found this, we don't want to do any of this? Is this something that fits your profile in terms of what you're looking for, and then maybe pay them a referral fee for that or something? How would you, especially for people that feel like, you know what, I want to learn this process, but I don't want to start myself. I want to find someone that is experienced. Let them use me to find the deals. How would that work for some people? Is that something you do currently? I call it like lend to end kind of strategy. Yeah. Is that something that you do? And what should they look out for to say, Jason would take this on from you any day, anytime? What would that look like?
Yeah. No, I don't do any earn and learn really. I know some people that do. They do it like for commercial to resi or for refurb or for HMOs. But I don't really do any earn and learn. But just the 1 hour Zoom, for example. So if you were to buy something that I can coach you through it, or the mentorship, I can coach you through it. But earn and learn, not really. I do some talks like around the country, so they could come to one of them and then learn a bit more. Now and again, some students do come to the projects and they have a look at what's actually happening. Because some flats take quick to refurb. That's the thing. So last one, I done one, well, not me, but my team that I got. They done one last week. It took about 4 days to do. So a new kitchen, new shower, bath panel was done, new flooring, and the new, what is it? The electric shower, bath panel, new kitchen, decorating and flooring. That didn't take too long. But with the earn and learns, it'll be better for bigger projects rather than the smaller ones, because you can see the progress over 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
So that's, it was a short. That's why we don't really do any earn and learns.
Okay. All right. Yes. Let's try to round this off. It's been a wonderful time. But just before I let you off, what would you say to your young 25-year-old self, either in property and stuff? I know a lot of stuff that you said it's focused on property, but I know you don't get to this level of property without the right mindsets and in life having some fails and some wins and then growing from that. So how would you package that up and say, if you know what you know now, how would you speak to your 25-year-old, maybe 25 years younger or 25 years less experience in terms of what you're doing, because they could be 60-year-old but don't have your experience? How would you speak to them, not just on the property side of things, also from the mindset and how you've been able to build your mindset to this level? Because again, don't forget, you started off from Sainsbury's, doing basic work, basic income, and you've been able to grow something significant from that. So how would you speak to a 25-year-old person or 25-year-old less experienced person?
Yeah, so I would say definitely you need patience, because a lot of youngsters now, they want the money or want the nice things now. You need to have delayed gratification. It takes a process and it takes a while to get there. And try not to be too greedy. And sometimes when it looks too good to be true, like it generally is, yeah. So you got to take your time, be patient, and to just obviously move forward from there. And lots of littles make a lot. Yeah, that's important. You might think a little £500 here from the rent, £600 there, £500 there, £600 there. That all mounts up. Before long, you got £2 grand, 2.5, £3 grand, 3.5, and so on. Before you know, you're earning £5 grand a month, 10 grand a month, 15 grand a month. Yeah? So take your time, make sure the foundations are strong. Go to a lot of if it's property related, go to a few networking events, meet a lot of people, understand what they're doing, and then choose a strategy, for example, that suits you and your lifestyle to move forward. Also, have some form of goal in your life, whether it's to work part-time in the future or retire or 4 days a year or that dream car. Yeah? So have some form of plan, write it down, and every year you work towards it bit by bit by bit. And these things take time because Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this. And just lastly, where can people connect with you? We're going to take all of that and put it on the show notes, and we'll have this on YouTube and Spotify and all the podcast stuff. But if people want to connect with you, connect with your business, because I see you're doing fantastic stuff, how and where should they connect?
Yeah, so we've got a website. It's jasonpatterson.co.uk. A lot of info on there with the podcasts, the training, events as well. That's online. Instagram is Jason Patterson 365. TikTok, Jason Patterson 365. LinkedIn, Jason Patterson, and Facebook as well, Jason Patterson. So it's all there. Yeah.
Okay. So if you've been inspired by this, please show Jason a lot of love. He's doing quite a lot of stuff. Encourage him as well, and find him on any networking events, any meetups and stuff. I think if you're just starting out, that'll be a good place for you to see. You get a lot of professionals in the room that you can learn from, and people that are actually doing the day-to-day stuff. So please, all of this is education purpose. Jason is experienced in this. There are pitfalls in any property journey that you choose. So be careful. Don't be over excited and lose all the patience and think you can win the world in a day or two. So it takes time, but you can do it. You can do it with structure. You can do it with someone holding your hand. So if you're looking at flats, you're looking at short leases, you're looking at other things. There are a lot of stuff that Jason spoke about, but we didn't have time to cover. Assisted sales, so many things. Maybe you've not heard about that before. That's your advantage to maybe find him, ask him questions, and make this journey a worthwhile journey for yourself. So we're glad we are able to have you on Option 360. Our purpose is to make sure that we can talk about those nitty-gritty stuff that people are not aware of, the financing aspect, the solicitors aspect. I have seen a lot of things going wrong, and that's why we want people to be very careful. Property could be a wonderful journey, but there are a lot of people that don't speak up about these things, that they've gone things wrong. So you've heard about some experiences. Some you might get lucky, some it might cost you more than you can ever think of. So please learn and make sure you find the right people to help you to do the right thing. So please connect with Jason. He's a wonderful guy. He's not called Lease King for fun. He's earned the right to be able to work that part. So thank you very much for everyone that listening. Please make sure you subscribe, make sure you like our channel, and watch out for more. Thank you, Jason. Really good to have you on this, and I hope we see more of you again. Maybe another day we'll talk about something specific and maybe anything else. But thank you for having us.
Yep, thanks for the invite. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.